be at this time. It can be bulletins that go out, memorandum that goes out from the chief that can be handed out, can be signed for, acknowledge that it was given out with these new law changes. And obviously when it comes to, and I agree with you when it comes to law, but when it comes to the operating criteria on certain things, which we've been given an AOM change, okay? I don't think that we should be changing the AOM to tailor specific needs at this time until this report comes through. So that's my reasoning behind it. I agree. I would expect the department to follow any recommendations made by the prosecutor who's in the know about specific law changes, and I would expect the department to follow those changes. But I respectfully disagree with you when it comes to the AOM changes as a blanket.
Well, if I could add my 2 cents here for whatever it's worth, I think something like that, where you would have to because of the law and because of the non-funding, I think that you would have to do something about that. So I don't consider that in the same realm as that, okay? That in whether or not we would call it an exception or whatever, I think we would have to deal with it. So to say that we have a motion and whether or not it passes or not, I think that if that came forward, I think we would have to deal with it. I don't think it's the type of thing that you can say, no, this is what our policy says. You just can't for something like that. But I respect the fact that you did bring that forward, because I think it's very important, because that is a big issue with regard to chins, that it's, first of all, not going to be funded and how we're going to deal with it. And I think all the departments are going to be faced with that issue of having to deal with those situations. So, yes?
If I can, I think we can split the difference. When something comes up immediately, we have like administrative bulletins that go out, and that gives a policy or guidance, and then when time permits, the formal AOM gets put into that format. If we could put those out for the chins as a good example, and just make sure in that we reference the that there's language that may be in conflict with
Right.
the prior standing AOM, so that the employees know what the latest is, but they really need to know that they need to look at the latest, but they also need to look back at the other, because what happens is, as you've seen in the AOMs, laws are incorporated. So like on
Right.
chins, that piece changes,
Right.
but the rest of the AOM isn't changing.
Right.
So if you guys are okay with that, that way we could deal with the issues that pop up that are law changes.
Well, like
but
I
we
say,
wouldn't do it
there's nothing that says, even though you have a policy in place, that you can't make an exception based on circumstance. And this is, in that case, if the law requires it, you're not going to stand there and say, I'm going to do it.
Right. No, well, it's not so much that. It's that if you look at the AOMs, certain laws or certain procedures are noted in numerous
Right.
AOMs.
Right.
So usually what happens is when there is a change, whether it's a law or just a procedure or whatever, Attorney Daniels will go back into any of the AOMs that have that reference and bring them all up to speed.
This AOM change that, I mean, you bring this up, so we'll go in that direction, I guess. This AOM change that you're bringing forth is very specific, has to do with the requirements of an SRO, and it's changed the requirements of an SRO eligibility.
See that? I know I said no, but I don't remember it, to be honest with you.
Well,
Can we vote on this motion?
well, let's have a little discussion, because I want to know what the purpose, what's the reasoning behind changing the requirements from what they are to, what's the advantage and what's the reason for the change? As to what,
This didn't change the, and I apologize to Mr. Pearl if my comment wasn't correct. What was changed was not the requirements of the officer itself, but that somebody could have
pardon me?
2 years of time. You know, 2 years of time on the job to look at the idea that you may have somebody that in the future, we would consider to be an SRO, and it's not 2 years with Hooksett, they might have a number of years somewhere else. So that's supposed to be what the change is. It's not so much the requirements of their abilities, just to acknowledge the fact that, you know, we've been hiring, as you know, some, you know, people that come from other
Right,
places.
but that, and I understand that, I'm privy to
So I think
that.
that's what this is
But
supposed to be.
that is very specific, and, you know, we open the door on it, so we need to discuss it. That lowers the requirement of having 2 years with Hooksett PD, right?
Right,
Down to 1 year with Hooksett PD, right?
down to, let's see,
Just over their probationary
Right.
period.
right.
What's the purpose of doing that at this point in time?
So that we could look at, have a better, bigger pool of people, because as you know, we've hired more people recently from other agencies that may or may not have been here in X number of years, but have experience in larger agencies or in other fields before they came here, and to acknowledge that, so we don't say to somebody that came here with a number of years, you know, you're locked out of potentially a position because you haven't physically been here, yet the truth of the matter is, you have more experience that you've brought to us than the people that could already
If the
be here.
scenario were to change next year, is a request for an AOM change going to be put in again for another circumstance, because you may have some other individuals that might fit the bill? I think that at this point in time is not a good thing to do. It appears on the surface that it's being tailored to include, you know, certain individuals, and frankly, I don't like it. So,
With all due respect, it wasn't done to tailor to any individuals.
it certainly appears that way on the surface, but I'm still going to stand with my motion. I'm going to wait for the chair to return. In the meantime, I request we take a 5-minute break at this point in time. And since the chair is not here, we'll take that up. So, in 5 minutes. Thank you. I mean, people get upset, I understand that, but I think as adults, we need to conduct ourselves in an adult way. And I'll be honest with you, you know, I understand when people find stuff amusing. Hopefully it's when I say something that's amusing, but if we can keep the editorial comments to yourself at this point in time, it would be greatly appreciated.
Okay,
Everybody gets 5 minutes to speak, and they can say what they want then.
thank you.
And that wasn't a reprimand, it was a request, if we can have some decorum here.
Would you read the motion again, Don? The last motion that was by Commissioner Carolian? Motion?
Okay. A motion to not change the rules and regulations of the AOMs or the SOPs until the audit report is finished? Final? Sorry. Is that correct?
That would be correct.
Okay. Any more discussion? We're all set to vote? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
So Chief, you're aware of my concern, or our concern, and
I understand, Commissioner, I understand, but for the record, that was not written for the reason that you stated.
Okay, let's move along. Okay, the next item is the approval of minutes. It's an item. Chief, last time we met, we had some discussion, or we had some issues with the fact that we found some minutes that had not been approved, okay? And unfortunately, I've gone back and forth and have not been able to get any resolution because Francine is having some difficulty. Outside of that, though, you had sent an email saying that you had attended a conference that dealt with that issue,
That was
and that you were given an opinion of sorts, and given the fact that you got that, I think it's appropriate for you to make that known to the other commissioners.
Okay, well, I think I sent it to all the commissioners, but the bottom line from the email that I sent to all of you was that on September 10th, Captain Dale and I attended, it was the local government center, a town officials workshop, so they covered many items that are in that, knowing the territory book. When they were talking about the issue of minutes, the issue, one of the things that the attorney said, there's an interesting point I want to make, is that most people think you have to approve minutes, and statutorily you do not have to. Which kind of like the issue of the agenda, which we talked about at a prior meeting, was something that we've always thought, we've always done, but you know, we're told that's not legally.
It's not required. It's not
good- no,
required.
it's not
The
required,
only
it's a
reason
good
why you
idea.
would do it is so it's a way of making up a list of things that you have to do, and that's
Absolutely,
how the
right.
commission gets things done.
Right, absolutely, and the lawyers talked about, when they were in that section, the same thing, is while an agenda is not required, it obviously is a good idea. While approving minutes is not required by law, it still is obviously a good idea, and I think that's what I put in, basically in my email. I was just letting you know something that I learned new, that the captain and I both learned new, about minutes. So then I did ask the question, because you guys are dealing with this issue of these past minutes that were brought up, what would be the status in that situation? And the answer, that, as I understood it, was that those minutes are still the legal minutes, whether they're approved or not. So then, let's say tonight, minutes that are taken tonight, for some reason, you never approve them, for whatever reason, they fall through the cracks or whatever. Whatever the recording secretary produces from tonight would be considered the legal minutes. So
They're considered the legal minutes, but I would imagine that you would have to approve them. I would imagine that you would have to approve them.
again, you can call LGC, I just wanted to pass on the information I had. You can do what you want. LGC says, yeah, it's a good idea, just like an agenda is a good idea.
Well, I called LGC, and did you get the thing from Christine Fillmore? Legal inquiries? Did anybody get anything from, it's supposed to be sending?
I
And,
don't think so. I got the chiefs.
Right.
but according to Christine Fillmore, who works for LGC, and she said to me that they are recommending that they do be approved.
That's
For the
correct.
simple reason is, there may be errors in them, and they need to be verified if they're accurate.
Correct, I don't disagree with that. That's what they said that day. But,
No.
but just like the agenda, a new something.
It
that
may
we've
not
always-
be written in the law, but it's like a common sense thing.
Right,
You
like the
would
agenda.
check them and verify them
Right.
as to their accuracy.
Right. I'm not arguing with you about it, I'm just passing on information, just like you did about the agenda issue from LGC that we learned recently.
Right.
The only thing to add there, though, is, and I think the reason that the question would come up, is should we be in a situation where we need to refer to previous minutes? We cannot be assured of the accuracy if they were not approved by a board or commission that was at the meeting and understands, the level of accuracy or
Correct.
completeness or incompleteness of that document, so.
Correct, and that's
And
why they
nobody-
recommend that you,
Nobody can speak to that more than myself. I wasn't on the school board, but I had gone to make a statement to the school board, and apparently it got to Bill Burns, who was principal of Central High School, and he actually called me up and asked me if that's exactly what I said, and that was not what I said. The minutes were not even approved yet. So there's reason to do that.
I don't think there's any differing opinion on the commission here that we would intend to approve
Approve.
and have minutes
Absolutely.
accurate.
So
and
those
correct.
minutes need to come back, and they need to be approved.
however you guys want to deal with them, I just thought it was interesting information, and I would pass